Hey everybody, so today I wanted to talk about the McCarty 594 Graveyard Limited guitars, which this is one of. Does this line celebrate Gibson's bankruptcy? PRS told me no, but of course they would officially say that, wouldn't they? Let's talk about why I think maybe it does. In the year 2000, Gibson Guitars, under the leadership of Henry J., whose name I won't mangle by trying to pronounce, sued PRS guitars over the PRS's single cut shape, saying that it was too similar to the Les Paul. Now, I'll throw some pictures up here from the web here. You can see they really don't look that similar. No more similar than any other single cut shaped guitar that came before the Les Paul, certainly. And yes, those existed. In my opinion, Gibson was overreaching here. But nonetheless, that lawsuit dragged on for 5 years and nearly killed PRS, as Paul Reed Smith himself has talked about. Now, you might think, and I certainly would think, that that would cause some bad blood between Paul Reed Smith and other people at the company and Gibson. Well, in 13 years after that lawsuit was settled, Henry J. and Gibson had to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They did that on May 1st, 2018. Just over a month later, June 2018, Paul Reed Smith Guitars announced this limited run Graveyard McCarty 594. Now, like I said, the official story is that the top wood comes from a tree by a graveyard, and that's where the name comes from. But in my mind, it seems like maybe they're celebrating Henry J.'s version of Gibson being dead and buried. Like I said, the official word is no, but in my mind, there is a little bit of that. And who could blame PRS if there is some of that in there? This is a battle that they barely survived and that they ultimately won. Now, Gibson is an entity, is still around, the IP is now owned by new owners, and they're still churning out and selling guitars. Now, what is special about this run of McCarty 594s compared to your run-of-the-mill McCarty 594? Well, the first thing is these crazy tops that they have, which officially come from some really old maple trees by a graveyard. I've never seen tops like these in my life on any other guitars. The only thing that comes close is my Paul's 85, which I'll do another video about. In addition to those crazy tops, these guitars also had figured mahogany necks, and mine happens to have some figuring in the mahogany body as well, though that wasn't spec'd out. On top of that, these have figured maple binding all around the fretboard and the headstock, and they have a Madagascar rosewood fretboard and headstock. And one of my favorite features of this guitar is it has a vintage nitro finish, which in PRS terms means that it doesn't have an acrylic undercoat, it's just nitro. And that means it will crack and check like a vintage guitar. One thing I'm pretty sure wasn't mentioned in the release video for this guitar is that instead of having a 5815 LT pickup in the bridge, like it does in the neck, and like regular 594s have in the bridge, this has a regular 5815 pickup. So that means that the bridge on this has more output and is a little hotter than on a regular 594. Should you believe that this guitar celebrates Gibson's bankruptcy? I don't know, you can choose to believe it or not. I personally got this guitar because it happened to be announced while I was at Experience PRS that year, actually at the factory. And so this guitar and the rest of the guitars in this run were still pieces of wood at the factory, and they were picked out by the dealers, this one by Ish Guitars, while I was actually at the factory. And so it was a real joy to finally get one a couple of years later when I was able to do a trade that let me pick one of these up. Bankruptcy celebration or no, this is a really great guitar and a really great limited run that I think, you know, any big-time PRS fan who likes Les Paul style guitars should really consider getting one if you're able to. It's not a cheap guitar, though you can sometimes find relative deals on used ones going for just a little bit more than a wood library. One thing I am sure about with this guitar is that PRS was doing their absolute best to make a guitar as good or better than the vintage bursts that are out there. So on that yardstick, if Paul Reed Smith believes that this is as good or better than a vintage burst, and you believe, like I do, that he really knows his stuff, then picking one of these up for 10 grand or less used is a relative bargain compared to $250,000 plus for an actual burst. I know this guitar is out of most people's reach, and even if it's not out of your reach, you may think that this is just too expensive of a guitar to buy, and you wouldn't be wrong. It's a very expensive guitar. But I wanted to share a little bit about it, and one of the little pieces of curiosity around it that I think is kind of interesting. Like I said, again, the official word from PRS is that it has nothing to do with the Gibson bankruptcy. It's just a coincidence, and the graveyard name is only about the source of the tops. So, believe what you want to believe. I still think it's fun to think of it as a celebration, even if it's not an intentional one. Alright, that's it for this video. Thanks everybody. Have a good one.